yoga, many people might be familiar with this mantra, the word Namaste. You know what that means?
No, because everyone says it all the time.
So everyone needs to make note. It means that the light, the God or the divinity in me sees and acknowledges the light, the God, the divinity in you. And so that's why usually at the end of yoga practice or, as a greeting and even a goodbye, you say Namaste. It's just the higher self, the light in you, seeing and acknowledging the light in others and all things around you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Jessica Carice. And this space is a place where we talk about seemingly random topics, but in all actuality, they're connected together. And today we have a very, very special guest, Balé Shabaka. He is a certified personal trainer. He's also a yoga instructor, and he's also a certified Ayurvedic chef.
Hello. How are you? So happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. Balé. It's so funny because we met at one of our favorite restaurants.
Yeah.
And there was a couple times that you served us and I was like, this guy, he has cool vibes. I'm gonna ask him a question. And then that's where we got to know more about you. And I was like, he needs to come on my podcast. So I'm happy that you're finally here.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to be here again.
And so your name, Balé Shabaka, we were talking about that a little bit.
Yes. So my name is Ethiopian. Not the most common name here in America. But, the story of how I got it is quite interesting. Just through my family culture and also connecting with my ancestry and my history, culturally speaking. So, my parents decided to give me and all of my siblings a name that was more in touch with our cultural identity and our heritage, even though I'm originally from the Caribbean. So my family was Rastafarians, which many people know about this culture, Bob Marley being one of the most famous Rastafarians in recent history. But many people don't know all about it, but we connect with Ethiopia as the motherland. And so my parents gave me an Ethiopian name. Yes.
That's really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah. My background is Jamaican.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So I was born here. My parents are from Jamaica.
Okay.
So last year I was on a super intense spiritual journey and I was trying to figure out I think I was exploring different philosophies and I looked into Rastafarianism. What do you say Rastafarianism? Is that
you can call it an ism, I guess, but it's Rastafari culture or Rastafarianism. It's more of a way of life.
Yes. Yeah. And so I didn't get super, super deep into it, but I found it an interesting philosophy, an interesting way of life.
I'm curious. What did you learn about it?
So it's more oh gosh, you make me draw a blank. I know we were struggling the first couple of things.
That's okay.
You make me draw a blank, but it was more so around how God lives in us. And I keep going back to the line of the tribe of Judah.
Which is an important part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that that caused me not to dive so truly deep into it, I think, was around the viewpoints with women. But you're the expert in this.
You can say that a little bit.
More expert than me.
Yeah, I can definitely tell you a thing or two about Rastafarian culture. I was raised from birth as Rastafarian. My family has land up in the rainforest, living that. I would say that quintessential Rastafarian image, all natural life, living on the farm as much as possible, getting your natural food. But I do see in our modern world, there's a lot of lack of knowledge about Rastafarian culture. And then what knowledge there is, some misconceptions, because really and truly Rastafarian culture is essentially a Christian culture. And many people don't know that. But other than that, I would describe it as a renaissance of the African Caribbean and African American people reconnecting with what is or would be the most authentic culture that we have, because our culture here is a history of coming out of slavery
Yeah.
and being disconnected from our ancient history and our ancient past. And so the way I analyze it is really just reconnecting with that, jumping back over that period of slavery to, okay, what and where were we before slavery? Yeah.
And I think that's why I went down that path of just trying to search for what is a more authentic truth for myself, because, I mean, so many people, they're like, yeah, my great grandmother was here and blah, 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 blah. I don't know the history before my grandparents,
Absolutely. And I remember when I was around 16 years old, because I was, had dreadlocks, had never had my hair cut. I cut my hair when I was 22 for the first time ever in my life.
Wow.
But when I was 16 years old was when I first started to really question culture and really gain more knowledge. Because I found that I would ask questions and seek more knowledge. And at some point, the answers that I was getting weren't satisfactory to me.
Yeah.
And so I decided to dive deeper and learn more knowledge about it. And even within the culture, I would say, one of the most important things that, Bob Marley sung in his songs, and it comes from Haile Selassie, which is connecting back to the line of the tribe of Judah, which connects to the Bible and everything. But it was that, essentially, until the philosophy of one race being superior and another being inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned, that there's always going to be war amongst people in the world. That, until the color of a man's skin is no more significant than the color of his eyes, that's the place that humans have to get to. And that was actually uttered in a speech by Haile Selassie, repeated by Bob Marley in one of his famous songs. And so, but some of the tenets of Rastafarian culture, like, for example, having dreadlocks. Many people might not even know why Rastafarians have dreadlocks. And for me, it was essentially, it connects with the Bible, with the Nazarene. So Jesus was a Nazarene, and it was about the Nazarene, which means the Rastafarians would separate themselves from modern society, basically being rebels, not living in a corporate world and following the capitalism or whatever system that's in place that is essentially suppressing the human spirit of freedom and sovereignty.
Yeah.
But there's a flip side to it, right? Because at one point when I was questioning the culture, I said, so why do we really have dreadlocks? Why is it important? Because one of the biggest stories in the Bible surrounding this topic is the story of Samson, which Samson was, he was instructed by God to stay within his culture and not marry out. And then he married a Philistine and ended up having his locks cut, which they said he lost his great strength and his power. The story proceeds to say that he was then blinded and chained in the Philistine palace. And he basically had like a conversation with God. And in that conversation, God revealed to him that his locks was not the source of his power. It was only the belief that that was the source of his power.
Yeah.
And so when he had that realization, he regained his strength. And the story said that he basically tore down these great pillars in the Philistine palace and collapsed the whole palace.
Yeah.
So what I take from that story is that it's not essentially the locks from which the power is residing. It was only his belief in the locks that was the source of his power. The power is always there in his heart or in our hearts.
Yeah.
And so really you can't judge a person based off, okay, you're not more righteous because you have locks, long hair, or you don't have locks or long hair. It's based on what's in your heart. And so when I was having this these thoughts and these pondering these things, I realized, it wasn't that important as much as the deeds you do in your life, which later led me to after, I read, got into yoga, read the Bhagavad Gita, which is the ancient Indian literatures. I explored the Quran. I know I read the first and last book in the Bible, and I didn't go through the whole thing, but I got a lot of knowledge from really just connecting all of these different sources of information, and understanding. And the more I studied, the more I realized that there were so many intricate connections from all of them, and they all come from the same, essentially. And I think that's why yoga is so important, because it's a system that actually helps people connect with your own, understanding your own energy, and then also connecting in harmonizing with people around you, nature that's around you, animals, and ultimately, finding peace, within yourself and in the world,
Yeah.
and creating that peace.
Yeah. Oh, see, I'm so happy I said something to you in that restaurant because, no, seriously, because I went through the same type of thing. So, like, I was born Christian, but I never really identified as Christian because I grew up in the church and I saw the stuff that was happening. And one of my major sources of grief with the church that I would go to, or some of the other churches I would go to, is you're taught, Jesus said, go teach and bring people to me, bring people to church, show them the love of God. And so I would bring my friends who didn't grow up in the church.
Yeah.
I'd bring them to church. And then next thing I'm met with is reprimand, like, you shouldn't hang out with these people. But I'm like, wait, but that doesn't make sense.
Right.
Church is to bring people who haven't been to church,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so last year, it's so funny because I always tell people I love my Instagram algorithm. And last year I was just getting lots of gnawings, like things aren't right. Like I need to get at peace with myself because I was very, very tormented on the inside, very, very tormented on the inside. And the first thing I was just analyzing was just my familial relationships. And then I was on Instagram. We were in Jamaica, actually. And I was on Instagram and I saw a clip from Joe Dispenza talking about how to meditate. And I never, like, we tried to meditate before, like years ago. I'm just like, oh, I'm not into this, whatever, And so I saw a clip from Joe Dispenza on how to meditate, trying to, like, don't think about nothing, blah, 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 blah. And so I did that while we were in Jamaica. And like the message I got was like, start looking into things you normally wouldn't look into. And so growing up Christian, there was a lot of taboo stuff that you don't touch. You don't look into any of that. And then it basically got me on this journey of just looking into different philosophies. I think that's why I started looking into Rastafarianism, because I'm like, what is the truth? And it felt like a source of truth, like closer, than what I was raised with. And that's why, like, I don't recall it so much, because then I had moved on to something else. Like, I looked into it for a little bit. I'm like, this feels more true.
Yeah.
And then I just kept exploring. And there was a couple of other series of events too, but like I was revisiting the Bible. I was looking into Gnostic texts. I was looking into Zen Buddhism. There was a book from Huang Po I was looking into. And then I was looking into, I was reading a little bit about I think you said it properly better than me, the
Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah. So I was looking into that as well. And then there was a couple other books about consciousness that I read regularly. And like, as I was doing all of that, I felt myself like purging a lot of like the negativity that was just buried inside of me. And so it's like with each purge of negativity, emptying it out, it's like clouds were just clearing from my perception of the world. And it still happens even to this day. But it's like now where I'm at, it's like I even have a hard time identifying like as Jessica White, my name, right? I have a hard time identifying with that now because I just feel so empty, but not empty, but like empty from the negativity, empty from attachments.
Right.
And I feel so full of light and peace and happiness. And it's to your point that there's the underlying truth.
Yeah.
Amongst all of it,
Absolutely. It's funny, recently, and I think it's something that has been kind of going around the internet, and I've heard this because I've been around people and the idea that, about yoga in particular. And I've heard people say that, they think that yoga is evil somehow, which when I heard that, I was like, oh, wow, that's really funny because when I studied yoga, I've been in and around the yoga community. And the thing is, one of the yoga philosophies, many yogis are vegetarians, and they strive to minimize their impact and creating negative karmas.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm like, how can you look at a culture and say, and call it evil when they're literally trying to create peace in the world and minimize impact? And, but I do know, I think I know which concept that was taken that people generally don't understand why they would say that. A quick explanation is that in yoga philosophy, there's an understanding of the forces of creation.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I studied meditation as well. It was a part of, I should just say, my path. Years ago, I used to run a yoga studio, and I had many teachers coming from all over the world teaching meditation, yoga, etc. And one of those teachers, his name was Chinello, and he studied with a Swami from India. So his name was Swami Sri Kalishwar. And he's a super powerful guru who teaches super powerful meditation practices. And I'm losing my train of thought there, but I'm going to get back to it.
We have this thing where we just go blank with each other because you're making me go blank before.
But there's a reason I'm explaining all of that. Meditation. I was speaking about meditation. What did you say right before that?
Oh my God, Molly, you're making each other go blank. Because it's that's the whole thing with meditation, is to not think, right? And you just focus on love and light and all that stuff.
Well,
so
yeah, it's a part of it. I think for meditation, it's about
connecting.
The way it's described is honing your thoughts. Our thoughts are like a stream.
Yeah.
And our thoughts will stream, everything that we've recorded from our dreams, television, news, whatever. But the thing about meditation is it's about understanding that we are not our thoughts.
Exactly.
And separating ourselves from that stream of thought.
Yeah.
And then being able to ultimately be like, you know what, let me just turn the volume down of those thoughts so that I can actually think.
Yeah.
In your own head. And so that's, and so the meditation that I studied and practiced is that it's not always easy to just simply sit down and meditate, because that stream of thoughts might be like Niagara Falls,
Yeah.
But you need objects. You use different tools to as single points of focus in order to divert your attention from those thoughts. And so in the case of the meditations I practiced, it was Japa Mala meditation, which is a form of meditation that you use the Japa Mala beads. So it's a necklace that has 108 beads on the necklace. And you basically will use it as a counting mechanism. So you're given different mantras. You have a personal mantra. So for example, Om is a mantra. Om is it's the primordial sound of creation, but it's also a mantra. So you'll hear a lot of times people will say Om in yoga classes.
Yeah.
But you'll say Om, 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 Om. And the reason why it's a 108 is because 108 is a specific quantum of energy as it's described. 9 is the largest single digit number. There's no number larger than 9. Every other number is a combination of decimals with 1 zeros and one of the 9 numbers. So basically it's used as a form to trap your attention. You want to trap your attention away from constant stream of thoughts, which brings me back to remembering why I was talking about which was to say that about yoga being evil. It essentially it's not. But the reason why I think some people have that conception is because of the yogic philosophy, which has the primordial forces of creation. And so what I learned from this teacher, this concept, he said God, God, right? Generator, operator, and destroyer, right? Generator, operator, destroyer. So in life, everything goes through this cycle. Whether you're a planet, a plant, a human, an animal, a sun, everything is created. It has a duration of activity, and then it dies. So there are the concept is sattva, rajas, and tamas, which is sattva is purity, rajas is activity, and tamas is inertia. So when you're a baby, you're born, you're pure. You're in your sattvic stage. When you're an adult and you're in the main years of our adulthood, we're in our rajasic state. We're very active. We're living our lives. We're achieving whatever we're going to achieve. And then we move into our tamastic state of life, which is old age. We slowly decline until end of life. And so everything goes through these cycles, no matter what you are. But there are 3 gods or deities that govern these. And so in Hindu tradition, it's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma being the creation god, Vishnu being the maintenance god, and Shiva being the destructive god. So in order
these are the destructive.
Shiva is the destroyer.
But they talk about the dance of Shiva, though, no?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. And so the dance of Shiva is, so Shiva's the destroyer god. But in order to have creation, you must have destruction, right? And so the reason why the dance of Shiva, I actually, in the yoga practice that I studied, we actually do the dance of Shiva. It's called Shiva Nada. Nada is dance in Sanskrit, and Shiva, of course, is Shiva. So Shiva Nada, the dance of Shiva. But the purpose of the dance of Shiva is actually to destroy the patterns.
Oh, destroy the patterns.
Destroy the patterns. And so when you do the dance of Shiva, there are, as I learned it, there are feet movements and there are hand movements. I'm only like really good at the hand movements.
You're going to have to show me this when we're done recording.
I'll show it to you, and then everyone else is going to have to go to class. But basically, you're moving your right side body and left side body, or right hands and left hands, in coordination with each other. And your right side brain controls your left side motor functions, and your left side brain controls your right side motor functions. Which means when you move your right and left side brain in harmony and in coordination, it's not always very easy, especially if you don't practice it. You're essentially, you're creating neural pathways in your brain, because you're what's the word I'm looking for? Your hemisphere. You're bridging gaps between the left and right hemispheres of your brain. You're literally creating neural pathways to help yourself think faster, react faster. But also, there's a concept of black sun, right? And so this is very interesting. This is very deep and esoteric, but it's very interesting because it's like when you imagine like your brain is the sun or a ball, right? And then you have, in order to get information from one side to the other, it has to go around the circumference of the sun, of the circle, right? What Shiva Nada does is that it creates bridges. The more bridges you have, the more instantaneous the thought can get to the other side, fast to the past. So instead of going through around the field, you go straight through it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right? Now, when you've had enough paths created that there's no more, like, imagine you draw so many lines that it just becomes blacked out.
Yeah.
Now, any thought you have on any portion of the brain is instantaneously on the other one. It's phenomenal. Like, it's pretty phenomenal. It's a phenomenal concept, but that's the concept of Shiva Nada. It's destroying the patterns that we were taught in our life in order to ultimately, call it into the Marvel world here. It's so interesting. And this is something that, it comes out of ancient esoteric knowledge, but it's also something that can be correlated to and studied in modern science, which is so interesting. Yeah. Because a lot of times people will look at, oh, that's just some, ancient hoopla, but it's not, because these things are being proven and shown through modern science as well.
Yeah. I'm so happy you came here. It's like perfect timing. I'm so serious because I literally talked to my husband about some of the changes I've been going through. And like when I was saying shedding attachments is shedding the patterns, shedding those thought processes that weren't even mine to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's like we have to, I don't know, we got to destroy the old patterns, and I recently have been thinking about this concept. I love analogies, right? And in our world today, I feel like there's so much, a lot of unhappiness. There's a lot of people unhappy about this or unhappy about that. And I think in some ways that it's right now, I think there's a great imbalance in the world, and I like to say the force, like in Star Wars, there's a force of energy and there's an imbalance. And in order for people to find harmony, peace, and balance, we have to kind of create balance in the force, Excuse me.
It's okay.
So, and I think one of the ways that we can do that, like Michael Jackson said, first we've got to start by looking at the man or woman in the mirror, and then, healing our own traumas. And then through the process of healing our own traumas, we can then be the most authentic selves that we can be, and also give everyone around us permission to be their most authentic self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's looked at as, a lot of people say, oh, you need to be realistic. You need to, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, but that's like their projection.
Right. That's like,
Yeah.
I would like to say that is succumbing to the matrix in a sense, as opposed to, being your Neo, being your own Neo in your own story and overcoming the limitations and bounds of, this structure that we live in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really fascinating. It's very fascinating because so yesterday I saw some friends of mine that I haven't seen in a couple years. And like I've been undoing a lot of my traumas. I think I always think it's the last one, but I really think it was the last one I undid this week, right?
Yeah.
But like throughout this past year of just like healing my traumas and being more and more and more of my authentic self, the power of my ego is less and less and less strong. I've transformed and I've gotten into a lot of things where they kind of found it hard to believe. So one of which, my husband, he has a music school. So I've been taking singing lessons over the past like 6 months.
Nice.
And I told them that. And they were like, you know how to sing, Jessica. You know how to sing, because I used to like sing around them. Like, so we used to always hang out a lot, like in our master's program. So I was like 2012, 2013. So I would sing around in that time. And they'd always tell me how I was so horrible. And so I'm like, yeah, no, I learned how to sing. They're like, they found it unbelievable. I just told them that I'm learning Russian. They found that unbelievable. Telling them like what's going on with my podcast. They found that unbelievable just because it was such rapid change. Because I undid a lot of trauma and my capacity for doing things has increased. Like I tried so long to try to learn Russian. So we've been married 8 years. And so I've been trying to learn Russian this whole entire time. But I didn't have capacity to grasp it until I started undoing things and just being myself and shedding the old Jessica. So like I completely understand what you're talking about because I'm living it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it for myself.
It's beautiful. It's kind of like you're dumping all the, the old stored information in your hard drive that doesn't serve you. It's just like weighing you down.
Yeah.
And now you have more capacity to learn more and explore more.
Yeah.
That's
Be
big.
More, do more.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you say because, and I realized this is a concept in yoga, but also it's like when you're making quantum leaps and you're growing, your friends or the closest people around you, it might make them uncomfortable because, maybe they're not growing. And, unless they're genuinely selfless, they might try to hold you back from that growth. And so in yoga, one concept is like when you're creating something, when you're nestling something, whether it's a new idea, a new hobby, a new language, or anything you're doing, sometimes you just have to like keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
And then let it grow and nourish. And then in time, those around you will get to learn it or see that. But it's almost like you don't want to put your seedling in the blazing sun.
Yeah.
That might scorch it.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
nursery. Get it. Yeah. Yeah. I completely get it.
Yeah.
And like, with my friends that I saw them yesterday, it's like, I know that they're on their own journey, but I think it's like they were so used to one version of Jessica. My transformation happened so fast and quick. So it's like, it was hard. It was more so like hard for them to process.
Yeah. I see.
It was hard for them to process it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they were very happy for me. They were happy for me. Yeah. And I have had experience with other people where like, it's kind of, they came from the place where you're talking about, where my growth was like not a realistic thing type of thing.
Right.
Because I was, and it was when I was like just starting out with things too,
Yes.
And so it's funny because like, yes, that happened. And yeah, it sucked at the time, but it left room for me to keep undoing things because when I was interacting with them more often, they had a lot of anger, for example. So it left me hanging on to my anger because that was our thing that we would bond over. And then when we stopped talking so much, I'm like, oh, wait, there's less anger circulating in my brain. Maybe I should let go of what's making me angry.
Yeah.
And then I get rid of it. And then when you see that person again, it's like, oh, we don't really have much to talk about because I'm not angry anymore. So.
Right. That trauma bonding. No, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, love some coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, the journey, I think for me has been, so interesting, and I've, learned so much through the different stages.
Yeah.
And I think just connecting with different people, experiencing different cultures, and also learning from different cultures, being open to that.
Yeah.
Embracing all, and so my thing that I've come to now is like, I don't necessarily consider myself any specific, more, I guess, spiritual, but in the sense of, I like to say I'm everything and I'm nothing at the same time. I'm everything and nothing because I'm the truth. All I care about, because all of these different cultures, all these different philosophies, some of them, it's almost like you have to distill the essence of what it is, and take that from it, and pull out the weeds,
Yeah. So how do you navigate on your day to day? Because like for me, it's I'm starting to navigate life through just observing essences and seeing if that particular essence aligns with mine.
I feel like this year I feel like for the last couple of years I was not on my correct path, and I feel like life is not a straight line. It's more of like a zigzag, spiral, something else. But I feel like I was on a path where I went from I went from being like a yoga teacher, or rather running a yoga studio, doing yoga retreats, moving to New York City, being a chef, moving to Florida after the pandemic, bartending, serving, all at the same time, maintaining my physical practice, and then getting my personal trainer certification this year. And so it's been so dynamic, and that I have to constantly be adaptable. I have to constantly be adaptable to my day-to-day circumstances, my day-to-day activities. And I think that the most valuable thing that I've learned from my past, or that I've gained from my experiences, is adaptability. And with that is patience, compassion, understanding, which are some principles of yoga. Obviously, we do have to be assertive in some ways in our modern life in order to make anything happen. But for me, it's about knowing when to push and knowing when to pull, knowing when to hit gas and knowing when to hit brakes. Because I've been in so many different circumstances where, I feel like I'm pretty excellent. I try to be excellent at whatever it is that I do. But that excellence does not always come across in the way that is received well in different environments.
Interesting.
Yes. And it's, it's example. For example, working in restaurants. Okay, working in restaurants. One idea, and this is just a general thing. And anyone who's ever worked in a restaurant would know. It doesn't. Sometimes you can be good at what you do, and there may be managers or people who say, "Hey, it's almost like they'll cut up their own nose to spite their face, like you're doing good for their company and yada yada." But the ego gets involved, and when the ego gets involved, there are, energies that's like, what, we don't want you here, or you're threatening my position, and it's like, okay, so then you have to be like, okay, I get it, I gotta, what did I really do? But then you move on. You don't hold on to those things, but then you learn from them. Other examples would be like, I've been in the wellness world. When I was, running my own business, for example, everyone in the wellness world, you have to heal your own traumas before you can heal anyone else. And that's why, I said the thing about, you got to heal the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. Put on your own oxygen mask before you try to help anyone next to you, because you can't help anyone unless you're good. And so I've seen many people come into the wellness world who are not healed. They have their own traumas, but they mask them. And then sometimes they would kind of suck on the energies of people who are themselves seeking healing. And so it's important for people to, one, especially if you're a healer, take the time to make sure you're healed and you're healing your traumas, or you're aware enough to be aware of those traumas. And then on the other side, it's like, there's not really a, Department of Labor and Consumer Affairs that's going to say, hey, like this person is not really a healer. So people who are seeking healing have to be aware and cautious when they're seeking healing, because there are, there are people that unfortunately aren't healed and will suck on your positive energy in the world. And so you have to be, the way I see it, it's almost like being a, mental kung fu, mental awareness, mental mastery, in the sense that you have to know your environment, and not everyone has the capacity to have high states of awareness, energetic sensitivity, to be empathic, to, to understand how to read someone's energy intuitively, energetically, without, you don't have to have a conversation. You don't have to speak a word. Like I've been in, I'm that kind of person where, I went from studying meditation, running a yoga studio, to being a bartender. And then, I'm off the path, back on the path of living my authentic life. But it's important to know those experiences, because you learn so much.
Yeah.
You learn so much in those environments that's applicable. There's always light in the dark, and there's always dark in the light.
Yeah. No, I went through the same thing. It's really funny because I like to journal. I think I say this probably in every single one of my podcasts, but I like to journal, and I have several different journals like around the house and different things. And so we were like cleaning out our bookshelves because we were getting a new one. And I found one of my journals from 2016. And on the first page, it was like January 16th, 2016 or something like that. The first line I wrote, I was like, I am enlightened. I didn't know nothing about nothing back then. Like, I don't know where I heard that word from. I just read it. I'm like, oh. And then I went into one of the most difficult years of my life, the most really difficult year. But it was one of those silver linings because I met him, but then I experienced a lot of turmoil with my family. So much so, like, there was one point I was like living out of my car, sleeping on my sister's couch for like 3 weeks while I was trying to find a place to live. Very, very hard year. And then after that, like, I just went into, I feel like this abyss of just not being me, like not being me at all. And so, like, to your point, like, yeah, it's like, I felt like I was off of my path, but at the same time, it was still part of my path.
Right. It was a part of the lesson that, being kind of like walking through the valley.
Yeah.
Before you get to your mountaintop.
Yeah, I went down.
Yeah.
I used to describe myself as numb. There was just not just like when I say empty now, it's completely different context than when I would say empty back then. Just numb. I felt like I was a gothic person on the inside. Like, it was just like this professionally, but like I wanted to be wearing all the studs and like I would see people like that. I'm like, same. But, because that's how I felt on the inside. I just felt dead inside.
I feel like that period of my life, it was similar to that. I think when when I moved to New York City, that was that period in my life. It was the beginning of me going into my valley. And
about New York, man, because I was in New York.
Yes. It's a classic story. I mean, we're all, it's like pressure makes diamonds. And New York is like city of cities, man. Like, it either makes you or it breaks you. You go through it. It's like the hard knocks of life. As Jay-Z said, I know there's an older song than his, but it's going through those hard knocks and learning how to get up and get through that valley. And, sometimes you don't realize the light that you are until you're in a dark place.
Yeah.
When you're in the sunshine, that sun's going to outshine your light. But when you're in a dark place, you'll find your light.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, very true. That's very, very true.
Yeah.
And that was something I even like journaled about earlier this week, where I acknowledged that there is light flowing through me and accepting what that really means. I think I'm still processing what that really means. But I didn't see it before. Before that dark time in my life, I didn't see how much of a light I really was.
In yoga, many people might be familiar with this mantra, the word Namaste, and you know what that means.
No, because everyone says it all the time.
So everyone needs to make note. It means that the light, the God or the divinity in me sees and acknowledges the light, the God, the divinity in you.
Oh.
And so that's why usually at the end of yoga practice or, as a greeting and even a goodbye, you say namaste. It's just the higher self, the light in you, seeing and acknowledging the light in others and all things around you.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
That's very beautiful.
Thank you. Well, thank the universe, actually.
Yeah. It's like one of those funny things where I've heard that word so many times. But to your point, because there would be certain yoga instructors, you just go to a yoga class at LA Fitness or something like that.
Oh, God.
Say namaste.
Don't get me started now. I got something to say about that. No, I know. I know.
Okay, cool. But I didn't know what it meant.
And see, the thing is, as a teacher, me as a teacher, and I will say, and I'll challenge all the teachers out there, it's important to know what you're teaching. Not just to use these words or concepts emptily in a way that is just to say that you know one or two Sanskrit words, because there's meanings behind every single mantra that you might say in a practice or in a greeting or a goodbye. And I've experienced this so much because of my training and my experience with teachers and highly spiritual people. There are very few, if any, yoga classes that I can go to where I will say there are some, and there are two things that I have, I hate to say I'm a yoga connoisseur, but in a way, there's knowledge and then there's authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I can go through a class with someone who has authenticity, but lack of knowledge, as long as they're authentic in themselves and their delivery. But if you have lack of knowledge, and or you use Sanskrit words or concepts or even practices that are in a way that seems confident, but for someone like me who's highly trained, I can see if it's authentic or not. And so I can't go to practices where people are not authentic teachers, or, you can, like I said, you can have lack of knowledge, but authentic presentation, but you can't have this presentation without the authenticity of the knowledge of what you're talking about, because it leaves the practitioner and the students that you're supposed to be instructing feeling empty. My teacher that I learned from, he's so funny. He says, it's like when you're finished yoga practice, you're supposed to get the result, and the result is feeling akin to peace, nirvana, feeling zenned out, essentially, feeling the post effect of the practice. But if you don't get that, it's like, what did you pay for? What are you here for? You have to, there's a reason, which, one of the concepts in yoga, fundamental is hatha. Hatha is, in America, is typically referred to as a specific type of practice, but it's simply a concept. And there's really only one yoga, like you have vinyasa yoga, hatha yoga, ashtanga yoga, bikram yoga, which you have the heat. But the truth is, all of these are just many different concepts under one big umbrella called yoga. And the reason why people break it apart in America is because we live in a capitalistic system, and you have to have your, you have to be unique.
Yeah.
In order to, differentiate yourself on the market. But the truth is, with hatha yoga, hatha is active and passive, active and passive. And so this concept is manifest on all levels of practice. So you breathe in, active. You exhale, you relax, it's passive. You contract your muscle, it's active. You relax, it's passive. You go through your yoga practice with rhythm of active, passive movement, activity, relaxation. The overall practice is active. And then at the end of your practice, every yoga practice is supposed to have what's called savasana, or it's basically, it's called corpse pose. You just lay there completely disengaged in your body, completely relaxed. And the purpose of that is compensation for the practice itself, because the practice is active. You have to balance the active with the passive. And so you do all these different movements, all these stretches, all this exercise. The more effort you put into the activity, the greater the passivity, the greater the relaxation. It's like the harder you pull the string on the arrow, the further it's going to fly. Understand?
Yeah.
And so this is what yoga is. That's true yoga. So many people, you'll see, they go into the class, they do their exercise, and then they're like, I don't got time for savasana. I'm out of here. You're never going to get the result of the practice if you do that. You need to sit in that savasana for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on how long your practice is.
Okay.
In order to create balance.
Okay. I think that's what I need to learn. You see the time is 333. That's what I need to learn. My ring is 333 too. I needed to learn that because October was a very, very intense month for me. And this was also another conversation I was having with my husband where it's like I was doing a lot of active, everything. But now I'm feeling like it's time to rest.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I told you I was like looking up Kundalini yoga yesterday, and I was like excited to talk more about yoga, but I feel like it's the concept that I needed to learn where I've done a lot. Now I need to finish with resting.
Right. But resting is not the end. You make a rhythm out of it.
Yes,
it's about rhythm.
Exactly.
You make a rhythm. You can't be all activity and you can't be all passivity either.
Yeah.
So you have to find a rhythm between the two.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now. I need to find the rhythm between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'll tend to be very, very, very active and give myself a short amount of time to rest.
Yeah. I'm guilty too. You're not the only one. I'm like, let me go work out again.
Yeah.
But for me, that has become, that's me pulling the string of my arrow as tight as it can be, so that, I do, of course, do my rest. I have my rest days. I'm not allowed to work out today. I'm not working out today. I got to rest my body. But, depending on, and it's important for us to channel our energy in the correct ways that, okay, we have our activities, our work, and then we exert ourselves in that work, but it's super important to have those rest days so that your muscles can recompensate, your muscles can grow, your brain can grow from all of the activity, all of the work that you've put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I am.
Yeah. So got to get some yoga classes in now.
But, it's really funny that I'm happy. I'm really happy that we had this conversation today. Like, it's so perfect timing for me. Like, selfishly speaking, it's so perfect for me.
Everything happens in divine timing.
Yeah, because to your point, I'm very sensitive. Like I can pick up a lot of things about people, and I'm very sensitive to their energies. And so even with something like yoga, it's a very spiritual thing.
Yes.
And I'm happy that you mentioned that, because being authentic is becoming more and more important to me.
Yes.
Where I'm just gravitating towards authentic people. So since you're a certified yoga instructor and you live 10 minutes away from me.
Hey. We'll have to get some private classes. Yes. Yeah, we'll create some classes.
It's something both of us wanted to do. We both of us wanted to get into yoga more. So.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have the full picture. For your own personal growth and development. You don't want to have the essentials taken out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it is important, I also believe, there's a concept you might have heard about, word sound power or word vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the reason why, a lot of mantras are done in Sanskrit, even though we can translate them to English. We can say Om Shanti, or we can say, balance, harmony, and peace.
Yeah, it's not the same.
No, it's not the same.
It's not the same because everybody balance, live, love, laugh. You know, mess it up.
Exactly. And so the reason why, because there are, so I'm going to go on another, a segue here.
Yeah.
But I love, I've studied some language. I wouldn't say I'm completely fluent in many other languages, but Crucian, which is, I grew up in Isle of St. Croix. And Crucian is a dialect. It's a dialect of English. It's not like standard American English.
Is it? How is it compared to Patois?
Very similar to Patois, but not exactly the same.
Okay.
I can say I speak Patois too. I lived in Jamaica for 6 months, by the way. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, I know a bit of Patois.
Yeah.
But also through my connection with Ethiopia and my Rastafarian culture, one of the things that I did as, a child and growing up, one, I was homeschooled, and two, half of my siblings were actually raised in Ethiopia, and I learned a bit of, the alphabet system, and elementary knowledge of the language, through my family and my siblings. But what's so interesting in my studies was that I discovered many connections between the Ethiopian language, Amharic, and even English, through Latin. And of course, I do have some knowledge of Sanskrit through my yoga studies, and some of the connections are very, very interesting. And the reason why, so Amharic, or the ancient language of Ethiopia, Giz, and Sanskrit, they claim to be the first languages in the world. They
were the first civilizations that appeared, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the reason for, the way that English is structured is very different from ancient different languages, because it's not just the words that we use and the meanings that they carry, but the literal vibrational frequency being uttered when you speak them.
Yeah.
Because everything is vibration.
Yes.
Everything's vibration. So that's why it's important to have the knowledge of the language. It's good to translate it into English so people understand what it is they're hearing.
Yeah.
But it's also important to vibrate these energies in the original languages, or the frequencies for the energetic effect. Very interesting. And from Jamaica, the Rastafarians discovered this concept in the sense of saying that word sound is power. And so they would change certain words to positives over negatives. More recently, I'm thinking of words like this one came up, the word bless, spelled letter B, L-E-S. So when you say someone is blessed, you're saying be left. Okay. Even
it's so funny. When you say how are you doing, people say I'm blessed and highly favored. I never say that about myself. I never say I'm so blessed.
If I were to change it, I would say don't be blessed, be more.
Yeah.
Be more.
Yeah.
I heard someone say, I saw this on the internet.
What about grateful? What about gratitude?
Well, I don't see anything negative about that.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I'm very grateful. Yeah.
No, I don't see anything negative about that.
Yeah.
Because in many other languages, they don't have all the synonyms, homonyms, and antonyms being opposites. But it's like, what's the other one? And I actually just discovered this one. I'm just in my thought, I'm thinking, okay, this, the word black, B-lack, B-L-A-C-K, black, be-lack, be less again. So then I thought, you know what African people were called in prehistory?
What?
Moors.
Oh, they are the Moors.
I know. Epiphany, right?
That's true. They were the Moors.
How do we go from being Moors to lax? So.
What about Negro?
I think this one is connected to necro, which is Latin. Unfortunately, it's also not a great word. Well, there's another one. Actually, there's another connection there, because in Ethiopia, the kings are called, so it's called Nigas. Nigas. The word king in Ethiopia is Nigas. Negus.
That's so funny.
It's true. But what I learned about the word I believe the word negro was connected with the Latin necro, which means corpse, and an act necro.
It's nuts.
I know.
That's nuts.
I know. And so, no, it's wild. And so I read this one book. It was called Letter Perfect by, I think the author was David Sachs. And
Letter of Perfect?
Letter Perfect.
Letter Perfect.
Letter Perfect. And write it down. So what I discovered, because at the same time I was reading this book, on the outside I was studying some of the Ethiopian language, which this book doesn't have any of the Ethiopian language in it, but it had the connection between the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, the Greek, to Latin. And so basically the book is talking about the letters that the letters that basically most languages use for writing the alphabet. And the alphabet was adopted, in this book it described that originally there was a civilization of people called the Phoenicians who lived in what's called modern day Armenia. So the Phoenicians were said to be like the first seafarers. They had like they were the first ones to have sails, and they'll be like sailing up and down the Mediterranean. And the Greeks and all the Europeans learned seafaring from the Phoenicians. Reportedly, the Phoenicians, I believe, and I think what was written was that the Phoenicians was originally from Egypt. They were an outpost from Egypt. And so the Phoenicians got the hieroglyphs from Egypt. And then the Greeks adopted the characters that the Phoenicians were using and adopted it for writing in the Greek language. And then, of course, every other European nation eventually got that. That path is separate from, I know that the Sanskrit, that's a different, and the Chinese is a different history of origin, different systems. But the Egyptian is connected with Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Egyptians is connected with Ethiopia. They're the same, they're basically siblings. Sibling civilizations. But yeah, it's just when you look at a lot of the words, even in Hebrew, so from Amharic, Hebrew, Latin, Greek, all these things are connected. But the words, there's almost like there's a certain, when you speak the languages of creation, it's like the words that you utter have more power. It's so, almost into the realm of, what I was going to say was, there's a reason why in English you say we spell. Why do we spell words? We should letter them because words are made with letters. But we spell them. We spell words. Why do we spell words? It's because, well, it's about the power. It's about of the words, because it's like a mantra. When you repeat a mantra, you can manifest things into reality.
Yeah.
And so the way that you can control a population or use, there's, magic essentially is by casting spells. And so we use these words in all these different ways. And so that's why it's important to be aware of the energetic vibration and also the literal meaning of the words that we're using and why we're using them in order to manifest the realities that we want to see instead of, what's going on now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Balé, I feel like we could talk for hours. We gotta wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. Wrap it up. No, I'm like, I feel like I've read so much. I don't even read books anymore.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's so
I listen to some audiobooks, but I've just dived so deep into many different topics in the past that I love philosophy.
Yeah. No, it's really fascinating because like I feel a pull to want to dive into all these different things too. But then I have you to teach me some stuff, so I don't gotta go down the rabbit hole.
Hey, I have to have some philosophy classes, which is important to learn.
Yeah. So with wrapping up, if you could give your top 3 pieces of advice for those who are on their path to searching for the truth, what would it be?
I would say, number 1, trust yourself. Trust in the islands, we call it your inner gong. Sometimes we encounter information or people or things that just resonate with us and we don't know why. Or you hear something that's like, I don't know why, but I just know that's true. when that happens, trust yourself, trust it, because you get those feelings for a reason. That's number one. Number two, I guess I would say, don't be afraid to evolve and to be your most authentic self, because people in the world, you will make people in the world uncomfortable because everyone is not evolving at the same rate. But, stay on your path, even if you have to go through a valley. Know that the mountaintop is there and you're going to get there, and you're going to, eventually connect with your tribe, and yeah, you got to walk through that valley, and don't be afraid to be authentic. Number three. What's number three? Go to yoga class. Go to yoga class. Speak more. Ask the questions that you might be afraid to ask. Find out more, because you don't get the answers you're seeking unless you ask the questions to find these answers.
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. And where can people find you?
You can find me I'm online. I'm on Instagram, King Cut Elite on Instagram. You can also find me on Facebook. My chef page is at Chef Amlak on Instagram and on Facebook. I didn't mention this, but I also have dabbled in music. So I have a couple of songs out there, and you can find my music page. It's at Balé_Shabaka on Instagram. And find me on all those places. Look out for, my classes, my workshops. I'm here to, help everyone grow, evolve, and be strong, healthy, and fit, spiritually and mentally, and everything.
Yes. Thank you so much. I learned so much today.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for coming on.